fat trade paperbacks lock into the
I am joined by the amazing Allison O'Toole, Dan Price, Andre Owen, Fred Kennedy, Chip Zdarsky. Chip, thanks for coming. What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and tonight we are joined by Michael Schwartz, and we're going to talk about their new book, Armored, which is out actively now, and you can order the second issue. Michael, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Konrad.
Absolutely. Happy to have you. So just to start with, Michael, for the folks out there who have maybe never seen your face, never heard your name, who is Michael Schwartz?
They're so lucky, aren't they? No, I am a feature film screenwriter, and I work in visual effects. Well, not right now because the industry is a bit dead. And I've written a comic called Armored. That's basically me in a nutshell. I'm mostly known for two movies, I guess. One is Netflix's No Malone, especially anyone watching, if they have a kid that's under the age of 10, they've likely seen this movie. And my newest movie was R.L. Stine's Zombie Town, which is a Hulu movie.
Oh. And
Malone. Konrad, you don't have kids, do you?
I do not.
Then you have not seen No Malone. I can guarantee it.
That I haven't. Although, I will say, when I started researching you for this, I looked it up. I haven't watched it, but, I mean, it looks cool. And admittedly, like, when we met at Nowhere Comics for the signing that you did there, you mentioned people tend to like it. I think the cast on it's pretty darn cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool cast. George Lopez is great. I've actually been working with him on a TV show over the past year. Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Sorry, with his company, not him directly. The idea is that he would star in it. But
yeah. That's super cool. Yeah. But yes, so we are here to talk about your book, though. So what is that thing that's behind you? What is it that I'm holding? What is Armored?
Armored is a book that's out now from Clover Press. It's about a boy who finds a magical suit of armor in this old underground tomb. And the armor gives him powers. The only issue is it's being haunted still by the ghost of the knight that used to wear the armor hundreds of years ago. And he's an out-of-time knight. He's a bit goofy, speaks weird and funny. And he has to train the boy to use the armor to defeat this monster. And there's a whole mystery involved with what the monster is. The monster killed his adoptive parents' son 2 years ago, so he's curious as to what it is, what's happening, why he has the armor. That's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to say, like, so in the research I've done, the other shows you've been on, when I've been able to go through it, and now that I've had the chance to read it, you've mentioned earlier in other shows that it's sort of Stranger Things inspired. It definitely feels of the 80s, even though continuity-wise they're in the 2020s, so they have cell phones. And I guess, just to start with, what made you want to go with that era, that decade? Where did it come from?
Well, it was always meant to be set modern day, but I think because I'm a child of the 80s, it accidentally feels nostalgic to people. You know, I had one person tell me it felt like an Amblin movie reading it. This was a filmmaker. Another filmmaker told me it felt like an Amblin movie.
Cool.
Bada Boom podcast told me, they actually gave me a quote. They said it's Stranger Things meets Sword in the Stone, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I guess it kind of is in a way. As a kid, I watched Sword in the Stone a lot, so I see the connection. And then comic book couples counseling. Brad over there, he said it reminded him of House 2, which is it's not a great movie, but there's I could see the similarities. So I can't help but be influenced by things like even writing it. This first issue, there's nods to American Werewolf in London. There's nods to Poltergeist. There's nods to Monster Squad. It just happens. It's accidental. So if you like
I,
any of those things, you're bound to like this comic. It falls in that gray zone where it's like, well, adults can enjoy it, but kids can too, as long as they're not too scared of things or they're not sensitive to
mhm.
and death.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that do you mind if I share some of the book?
Please do. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when I was going through it, and do correct me if I say this wrong, Ismael Hernandez, who did the art,
Perfect. Right on.
absolutely nailed this.
Yeah.
So this is the first page of the book, and it has Miles and his two friends basically going through a castle in which Miles' parents study, and they kind of run into this thing. And that thing, whatever it is my favorite type of monster, which is just big, mean, something other than real and terrifying.
Yeah.
Uh, and I love this, like that type of monster, and the way that you play it are awesome because when we see it, just like the boys, we're like, and it freaks you out because it's like, okay, that came out of nowhere. It's massive, and now damage is going to happen.
Yes.
So while it isn't necessarily the most horrible thing that happens within the construct of the second issue, or rather the first issue, I did want to ask about this beast. What inspired it? What made you go with something so like primal?
Well, I'll say the first thing that came to mind, what I wanted it to look like, I kept sending Ishmael images. Have you seen Poltergeist before?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know when the mom, I think she's like filling up the bathtub. I can't remember the details. She's like in the hallway and there's this creature with these giant, really long legs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like super creepy. I just kept sending him different angles of that monster. Make it look like this, try to make it. And he came up with his own interpretation because he went through a few different designs. I
Oh
think one of
cool.
the issues, maybe issue 2, has some of his original designs of the monster. So definitely pick up that one so that you can see kind of the genesis
Oh,
of it. And then he did something interesting with it. Like this, I'm talking about Ishmael right now. When he drew the pages, it didn't exactly look like his design. But I was already writing issue 2 as the pages were coming in, and I was thinking, oh, I was gonna go a slightly different way with this monster. Like the same story beats happen, but how something happens and what happens, I changed it based on what it looked like painted. And
oh
so,
cool.
yeah, and I don't really want to reveal it too much because it is a bit of
Yeah.
a
No.
like a
No
discovery.
spoilers.
Yeah, yeah. For the few people that have read it, yeah.
So all right. So one of my favorite questions that I get to ask is,
Mhm,
unlike, I suppose, like film, but unlike film, unlike prose, like just standard written fiction, comics is a highly collaborative storytelling medium between like a small group of people, usually, right? A writer,
mhm.
maybe an artist, and then you'll have like a colorist, editor, letterer, and if you have a really big team and a budget, a flatter. Um, in this case, it's yourself, Ishmael Hernandez. I'm going to say this wrong. Farron Delgado,
Yep.
and if I'm not mistaken, Nick Batara, who I think just did the cover,
He did the cover, yeah.
this wonderful cover, which
Yep.
people can get now at their local comic shop.
And
Um,
and then Chris Stevens. Did you mention Chris Stevens, the editor?
I did not. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris Stevens, your editor. So you have
Yeah.
a team of 4 people and then a cover artist. Um, as a result of that, that's a fairly close knit circle of people
Mhm.
creating this book. And you may have come up with the script and the story and what everything happens. But like you said, when Ishmael draws something, it can change the story, it can change the events. Um, Compared to the films you've worked on, what's it been like working on this comic with Ishmael and getting this thing produced.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have to say, I think as a writer, it's very different. But so I think film is actually more collaborative. But
Oh, okay.
I haven't worked, for any of the big publishers. Like this, this is a self-produced comic. Like this is my, I hired everyone. Farron,
Hmm.
Ishmael, like I've paid everyone's, salary.
Yeah.
Um, so it's a bit of like, I'd say, to begin with, it was a bit more like work for hire. Like Chris really has kind of been my partner in this. Like this book wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Chris. He really helped assemble the team. He got the first issue in the hands of Nick Patera to read it, and then Nick was like, "I want to do a cover," and that's why we have the Nick Patera cover. Is he was
Oh,
just
cool.
And because Nick did that cover, Chris was able to send it to a few he sent it to like a couple publishers, one of them being Clover. Clover loved it and was like, "We want it, give it to us." Um, uh, I think it's very collaborative. Like I work closely with Chris. Chris works closely with Ishmael,
Okay.
but like so in film, I write my script, I hand it to the director, he makes a movie, and sometimes I get a call like, "There's a logic thing here," or whatever, or the producer and him figure it out, or whatever, storyboard artists figure it out, or in live action, they just figure it out on set on the spot. Whereas with Armored, I don't write like a script. I don't even think about what the walls look like. I don't think about everything. When I wrote the script, I was like, the sun is setting. I want the first panel to be this. The next panel is this. It's a wide shot, it's a medium shot. How he lays out the panels, like as the page you're looking at right now, like he has it on a diagonal. I didn't write make it a diagonal panel, but that's where he flourishes. He gets to take. I said
Okay.
this page is 3 panels, the biggest one being of a castle, 3 kids walking in, and the sun is setting, a beautiful like pink sunset. And then I have 2 smaller panels down below of the close up of the 3 boys. This is what they're saying. So I really detailed as to what happens in each panel when writing a comic book script. When writing a movie script, it's really just like 3 kids are walking into a castle. The dialogue, they go through a dark tunnel. More dialogue. Like it's more sparse. I let the
Interesting.
director
Yeah.
fill it in. So in comics, you are the director and cinematographer to a degree. Ishmael comes in and would obviously be more of the cinematographer, the designer, the production designer. So he's filling in the other roles, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. So that's the
Yeah.
difference. I do see a bigger difference. I think this is what I find so funny. You can write a movie for 6 months, like half a year, and do multiple rewrites. Writing a comic, though, there's comic book creators out there that are writing like a comic a week, and I'm like, it is
Yeah.
way harder writing a comic. A comic book writer
Oh,
puts
okay.
way more work into it, in my opinion. That's just me.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Like it, and would you say that comes from the fact that um you have to deal with the way that certain things have to look, as
yeah,
opposed to, like you said, 3 kids walk into a castle, here's what they say, and
yeah.
then set designers and directors and producers will go through and do that. Whereas with a comic, like you said, you're doing that. So you have to think about, okay, this is the shot, this is how the angle should look roughly, and
Yeah.
sort of go from there.
And a lot of times in my comic script, I'm also including images. Like I was sending Ishmael
Ah,
like folders of castles. Make it look like this
oh,
type of
cool.
castle. Make it look like that. Like I threw a lot more in it. When it came to characters, he came to me with the designs, and I was like picking. Like originally Andy, the main character, he was wearing like a Nine Inch Nail shirt and like a Tool shirt, and I was like, let's leave the bands off. I love it, but it feels way too 90s. Like
Oh, okay, right
yeah,
on. I mean, yeah, you've got to be careful to date it, especially when earlier on or later on you have someone literally say this is the 2020s, dude.
yeah,
Um, Cool. Then I guess the next thing to sort of stick with the content, a little later in the first issue, uh, as you mentioned, our protagonist. protagonist. Yeah, he's the protagonist. Gets sort of stuck in this. The word is totally slipping my mind.
Tomb,
Tomb. Thank
catacombs.
you.
Yeah.
Tomb. I like catacomb better. Um, and one of the shots that I absolutely loved. Where was it? There it is. Is we see him to the very bottom here. We see him fall in,
Yep.
and he then crash lands into the catacomb. We see him, he's crashed through the surface. He's sort of gaining consciousness. He's looking around, and then you get these absolutely gothic, horrifying, stern skulls. And I just wanted to congratulate you and Ishmael because specifically this panel.
Oh, that's him. That was him. Sometimes he will add a panel or remove a panel because you have to, like, he's the artist. I have to let him. He knows what's best. And then sometimes if it might not be the best, Chris will be able to advise him on that.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to give too many notes. Mine are more like, how does it affect the story? Is it incorrect in a story sense? Chris looks at it more from a visual storytelling sense, I think, as an editor. So we each have our own jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then absolutely Ishmael knocks it out of the park because with everything that had happened in that scene, you get the first shot of like the I want to say shin bones and then skulls and then that close up. I literally heard like 80s music. That's sort of like that tense you'll get in like a horror film in an 80s. And it elicited that thought out of me with no other context than just creepy skulls.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the art on this is killer. Now, within the story, our protagonist here, like you said, he's adopted by a family who's loses one of the children that we see at the start of the book.
Mm-hmm.
But he himself is orphaned. So there's a lot of loss that goes on in this book, and a lot of like really dark stuff outside of the giant monster,
Mm-hmm.
and the ghost knight. So I wanted to ask, sort of what made you want to explore that type of story and have your characters in that situation?
So before I had the whole story of Armored, it really was like the idea I had was kid with armor, haunted, and it's haunted. There's a ghost attached to it. Like, that's kind of like the genie from Aladdin. That's how I always see it, like kind of
Oh, okay.
a funny sidekick. And then as I got into writing the first issue, I was thinking, well, this has to, we're dealing with a ghost. We're dealing with kind of dark things. I think I have to go there as far as what the themes are. Like, what is the theme of this? And as it grew and as I got to create Andy, it really became apparent that this was a story about loss and overcoming loss. And it just kind of naturally fit. I find every time I write, I'm like, okay, what is the concept and what is the natural thematic element that goes to that?
Right on.
And that's kind of how I shape all my stories, I'd say. Yeah.
Well, I am glad that it fits well for you and that it enabled you to get this out because this is a very fun book. And the other thing I wanted to ask is, in other interviews that I've read, you kind of have a very much less tragic, but still tragic backstory as per how this book got made. So could you kindly tell that story? And then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, it's so funny because, like, I talked to my wife about it. I think I was creating it, at the end of the pandemic, first of all. So, she lost her grandmother to COVID. And I think because, not, like, obviously people, we were very fortunate. We didn't lose a lot of people, but her grandmother died. And, we were hearing of other people dying. I'm sure that played a part. But also, the whole reason this book exists is because I had my entire comic book collection stolen. Like, every box except for, I want to say, 2 boxes. I had a box of horror comics still in my house and a box of 80s cartoon like adaptations like Thundercats, He-Man still in my house. Oh, and I had 2 binders of comics. So I had like some Spawn comics. A few. I had my entire Spawn collection stolen except for like 10 issues. And so because of that, I at first I said I'd never collecting another comic again, and then immediately, like months later, I discovered I could get a lot of comic books back for 50 cents. First, it started on Facebook Marketplace. I started buying collections, and then I found a pawn shop near my house that sold all 50-cent comics. Every single book was 50 cents, and soon enough, I was buying every book I had stolen back if I could find it. Still a lot. It's hard to find 50-cent Silver Age books. I will tell you that.
Yeah.
So
Oh, definitely.
A lot of books my dad had given me when I was like 6 even. He's a huge comic collector, so I was gifted a lot of comics.
Yeah.
I pull lists since I was about 6. So it was devastating, but then I started collecting it back and I started reading not only the books I had stolen, but I was reading other books I was picking up that I'd missed. So I went through a time period where I did not collect New 52. For some reason, I just wasn't collecting. I think it was because I was living in a condo and we just didn't have the room. So I was just reading. I started reading New 52, and it was like I was reading so much and collecting so much, and I had so many movies I had written that I didn't own the rights to. Like I was hired to write them. And I was like, it'd be nice to like keep ownership of something and see it get made, because you write a lot of feature films and the producers may not be able to get the financing together, so you never see it made. So I was like, I want to make this, and then it was just a matter of trying to figure out how to get a comic book made. And it took a few months, but eventually it started to roll. That's basically the story of comics being stolen up to Armored. Yeah, the birth of Armored.
Beautiful. And how much time from like the theft until first publication?
Okay, yeah, that was long. So I had everything stolen October 2018, and then I started collecting again in 2019, and then it would have been 2022 when I had the script done, early 2022. In the summer of 2022, I met Chris.
Okay.
And I hired him as my editor. Yeah.
Right on. Like it's interesting. So one, I am so sorry that happened to you. That is like, as a fellow comic collector, I've got like 10 long boxes behind me. I know the care that goes into, and the love and passion that goes into getting all of your comics, right? Like, you don't just spend $5 or say, oh yeah, about $5 a book on 2,000 comics because you don't like them, or because just you feel like you should have them. Like, I find where you're going, right? You read a couple issues, you go, man, that's not for me, and you move on, or you get hooked and you really are invested in a story. And to have all that taken is just horrible. And I am so sorry that it did happen. I am glad you found this pawn shop. Can you shout them out? What's their name?
They're called Buy and Sell Kings on the Danforth in Toronto. Yeah.
Love it. Buy and Sell Kings. We love you.
They always have stock.
Michael.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, my follow-up question to the story is, and as you told it, it sort of evolved itself. My follow-up question was going to be, what about the theft and the renewed hunt to get it back made you want to write this story? And I suppose, having heard the story now, I'm also curious, do you feel in some way that because your dad got you started, that it's a way to sort of reconnect with him or keep that connection safe?
No, I think it was more that, first of all, I was just I was I was reading more comics than watching movies. That was the first thing I noticed. The second thing
Right on.
was that I I had always wanted to get into comics. I just thought you had to be an artist. Like I never understood how writers were just writers in comics. Like my favorite comic growing up was Spawn, and so I thought, well, you have to be like Todd McFarlane. That's the only way to do it, or Rob Liefeld.
Do it all.
Yeah, you have to do it all, which isn't true. But I just didn't know how to do it. And then I was really into film as a kid, and I kind of just went in that direction. But when I was in film school, I was reading a lot of Jeff Johns comics, and so I was trying to collect every Jeff Johns comic back. Like that was my first goal. Okay, I need Green Lantern, I need Hawkman, I need JSA. So rereading those, it was inspiring. And then his Geiger series had just come out, which like the first volume, and I was really, really into that. Like the first issue, just like I was like, wow, this is like a perfect first issue. But I have to say, the thing, for good or worse, I was reading a lot of comics that annoyed me. I was spending $4 or $5, and I was like, I just spent $5 and nothing happened. Why is this? What is happening? Is it just me? Nothing's happening. I spent $5. I'm sure it's going to be great in a trade, but I want people to be able to pick up an issue and feel like, wow, this was meaty. There was a lot that happened here. Like this happened, this happened, this happened. Not like a character kind of wanders around and then at the end of the issue, maybe some little thing happens. Like it just felt like there was a lot of comics coming out with nothing happening. And I was like, why did I spend $4? What a waste of money. I can do this. I'm going to do this now. And so that was also kind of my reason for writing Armored, I would say.
I love it. I mean, you know what? That it's genuinely, I do. So for me personally, and longtime watchers probably pieced this together already, but the reason that I started getting into indie comics and started this show was I started reading comics like floppies in 2011 with New 52. So I saw the Batman and Detective #1, and I was like, this is it. This is the day that I stop going for graphic novels and pick up a comic book. And I to this day, I have Batman and Detective. Those are my hardcore, never going to stop pulls because I am so invested in those characters, and I find the teams are quite good. But I will say, reading like that, you also end up where you can see, unfortunately, once you've read enough comics, the sort of cyclical nature that the bigger companies have, where it's like all of this cool stuff happens, and then the team has to change, and so we have to come back to the reset point. And all this cool stuff happens. And for me, indie comics, it was like, oh my God, I could pick up an issue, and if the writer wanted to, he could absolutely just kill everybody and start off whole new characters in issue 2, or go in a totally different way, and they weren't beholden to, I guess, canon.
Yeah.
And for me, that's why I love what you just said, because you're like, nothing is happening. Why am I spending my money? I'm not being entertained. Let me make something that I want to read. And that, I think that's the beauty of it. Now, I do have a question about the way you wrote this, about what I've come to understand about the series. So, without spoilers, no spoilers, people. The way that this issue ends could have literally just ended it. It could have been a one-shot, like a cool Michael Schwartz gets to say he wrote a one-shot comic. It was really cool. The art was awesome. People should buy it. But it keeps going. There is, I don't want to show that panel, but I want to show there is an issue 2. You are kickstarting issues 3 through 5. So this is there's a whole arc to this thing. I guess, one, how can people get this? And when's the cutoff for issue 2 at the local shops? And then when can they back it on Kickstarter?
So, okay, so issue 1 is obviously available right now. I believe it sold out at Diamond. No, not I believe. It did sell out at Diamond.
Congrats.
Lunar has, I think, a few dozen copies left. But I think a few may get transferred over to Diamond because people are trying to reorder on Diamond. I don't know. That's up in the air, but 1 is still available. You should be able to find it somewhere, online somewhere. but
Nice.
we're close to selling out. Like it will sell out eventually. Issue 2, I think the FOC has passed, but there are still a number of copies available at Diamond and Lunar. So people just ask your shops to order. Even if it says back ordered, just place order because it will show up at your shop. That's the one thing I can say about issue 2. If you don't like going into stores and you're like an online person, the Kickstarter launches next week. And on that Kickstarter, there will be a limited amount of issue 1 and 2 available packages. So you will be able to get 1 through 5 as a package.
Nice.
That launches next week. Right now, you can go to the pre-launch page and sign up to be notified. And I will say, I think every cover for 3 to 5 will be exclusive to Kickstarter for the most part. Like one of each cover, there will be 3 foils. Those 3 foils will be 1 in 5 variants when it hits shelves, but everything else is Kickstarter exclusive. Like we tried to make it this round, like, the foils aren't easy to get. They pretty much sell out at every shop.
Nice.
So when you're on Kickstarter, if you want the foils, this is the best way to get it. You're just getting it all in one stop. Yeah, that's. Did I answer your question? Did I ramble there?
Yeah, 100. No, that was perfect.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
just to quickly sort of recap, issue 1 is almost entirely sold out. Congratulations.
We're
But
close.
if you go to your local shop, they might have a copy, or if they demand at Diamond enough or at Lunar enough, they will get a copy. Issue 2's FOC just passed. However, ask anyway. They'll probably just send it. And then, as you mentioned,
definitely just order. Like, get your and get your shop to order 5 because they get that 1 in 5 variant for the second issue that has a gold foil on it. It's awesome. It's got an awesome cover.
So cool. I love those. And then, as mentioned, afterward, people can go onto Kickstarter because next week, Armored is launching Armored 1 through 5 full miniseries by Schwartz and Hernandez, where they can, as you mentioned, they'll be able to get what is available of 1 and 2, and then, of course, 3 through 5.
Yeah, it'll be like 50 packages maybe of 1 and 2, 1 through 5. So it's limited.
Oh, so like
there's not that many left. Like we are dangerously close to selling out of 1. For anybody that wants it, get it now before it does sell out. Like I don't know what'll happen to this book. No one knows. I think even Clover is amazed by how well it's sold.
Well, good, because that is such a fantastic problem to have in the unknown bit. Again, congrats.
Yeah. I think Nowhere Comics, I think, has like at least 2 copies left on their site. So
yes, if I'm not mistaken, when I was there last, I think they're down to 3 issues. One of them is
3.
the $50 cover, which has
that's very
the
good.
Knight's helm with all the silver on it, which looks awesome. But yeah, they have like 3 issues left. That's it.
Okay.
So you could go to nowherecomics.com. You can find Armored, enjoy. You can go to your local shops, order it. They will get it. Demand, because then you can read this absolutely stunning book. Now, I guess my next question for you, Michael, is, and we've got about 10 minutes left. From what I understand, or I find, I guess, odd. So I'm curious. So I'm holding this issue. It is printed. It is done. It went to the printers. I got it at a local comic shop. Issue 2 goes to a local comic shop. And yet you're kickstarting for 3, 4, and 5. Not even really why, because I get the why, right? Because it helps fund the production so that Clover could then do their thing and get it out to wherever. But the fact that you've got it all sort of set up in one campaign implies that the whole thing is written.
It's all done.
And
it's ready. I think we just need to do the interior first page, like, the credits page. That's the only thing left to do on each in 3, 4, and 5, and then it can go to print.
Oh.
Did I lose you? Hello?
Oh, okay.
Are you still there?
Wow. Okay. That is fantastic. So it's basically, like you said, done. Now, all right, the funny part about this, given it's that. Ooh, welcome back.
Oh my goodness. Did you lose me for a while there? I didn't know what was happening.
Well, it booted me, and then I think that ended it. Um, actual Dracula is another YouTuber, fantastic person. Actually goes to nowhere. So, actual, if you're out here, go get this book.
He's read it. I've been on his show. I've been on his YouTube show.
Oh, wonderful.
Ah, there he is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, dude.
Um, so just to confirm, then, like you said, so most of the interiors are done. You need a few things here and there for, like the interior thank you page, like would come with a Kickstarter.
It would be like the
Um,
credit page, like the art by that page. That's all that needs to be designed, I think, at this point. And then we're gonna go
wow.
to we just need to know the numbers. Because Clover is a smaller publishing company. The way their model works is they kickstart everything. They don't do monthly single issue
Mm,
comics very often. So it's hard for them to gauge the market, and Kickstarter kind of allows them to get sort of an idea, like, oh, we had about 200. That will equate to it's kind of like a math problem. It's like if we get 200 to
yeah.
300 backers, what does that equal to store shelves? And I think they were pretty on the nose with how many they printed. Obviously, we had a certain number of orders, but then they always overprint to make sure if there's other interest. And there was, because we're close to selling out of like overprinting by, quite a few hundred. So,
Wow.
um, it is interesting, and I'm sure some comic book collectors are frustrated because they're going to get issue 2 June 26th, but then they're not getting issue 3 till end of September. So we take the summer off. We're like teachers. That's what we are.
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that. You gotta
Yeah,
enjoy the weather while it's good.
yeah.
So that was actually gonna be a part of my next question. So
Mhm.
Dracula mentions yes, and I have the book.
Yes.
Fantastic. Uh, so one is out, two will be out later the month, which people will go order at their local comic shops or online at your website. Um, my question was, so September then would be issue 3. Is it going to be like September, October, November? Are you going to
Yep.
stagger
No,
the issues?
it'll be September, October, November. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'm assuming then probably December, would the local comic shops be able to order 3, 4, and 5, or maybe just 3?
Oh, no, no, sorry. That is the comic shop release date. Comic shop September,
Oh,
and then October, and then November. But then anyone on Kickstarter will get it all beginning of September.
okay, beauty. So they really ought to just go kickstart it. As you mentioned, the book's done, so it's not a matter of if it gets made. It's just you're pre-ordering it through Kickstarter,
Yeah, and
and
it's all exclusives. This is an opportunity to make it exclusive uh, purchase basically as well. Yeah.
awesome. Now, one of the things that I am excited for about the campaign is often other indie creators. They'll go out and they'll have, usually it's, if the digital is $5, the physical's $10, and then something's like, here's a $200 option, where they'll like draw someone into the book in the background or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Are you guys planning anything like that, given the state that the books are basically done?
Unfortunately, no. I don't think we can do that. Like at this point, I think it really is about these exclusive covers because I think Kickstarter really this is an all ages book to a degree, and Kickstarter is really an adult forum, like that adults buy off
Yeah.
there. So this is an opportunity for, the adult collector to figure out what cover do you want. You're going to get it. It's going to be way more. It's going to be way harder to find than any of the main covers that comic shops will get. And the main cover, as it exists, as it will exist for 3, 4, and 5, will not be available on the Kickstarter. I will say that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it'll be different this time around. There is slight variation. If you got the Nick Patera cover through Kickstarter, the back page of your version, Konrad, has a Jay Lee breakdown.
Yes.
Yeah, and the
Of
back. Yeah, here. Let me grab something. So for anyone that kickstarted, let me see if I have a. Yeah, okay. So here is a Jay Lee cover that has no foil, as you'll see.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so this was the Kickstarter Jay Lee version, and I have some copies of this that I'm going to sell at cons, but the back page of all of issue 1 is a Kickstarter checklist.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So it is different. And this has no barcode. Yours has a barcode.
Yeah, both of my copies, my J Lee cover and my original one, barcodes on them.
They will not have barcodes on those two. Yeah.
So that'll be like the newsstand versus direct sale version. It'll be
exactly
direct sale or Kickstarter. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So it is different. Again, only time will tell like where this book will go. The thing that I'm loving the most is I did a signing in the beaches here in Toronto at Planet X, and I had a lot of parents coming in with their kids, and I would say, it's like Stranger Things, and there's a lot of kids that watch Stranger Things, and I've since had the store manager tell me that actually, and I've been there when it's happened, where parents have come back saying their kid wants issue 2. When's it coming out? Kids are liking this. Like the 9 to 13-year-old kids are loving. There's one kid who is obsessed, and I've seen him at my daughter's school, and he's just like, "When's issue 3?" And he wants issue 3 so bad. I got his dad a copy of issue 2 already, and it's just like that is just making my day. And I don't know if you know, there's a guy on Instagram named his handle's like Read Your Comics. He's been reading them. He helped kickstart it as well, and he's been reading it to his boys, and they're addicted to it. And I'm like, he does a great breakdown of the first issue on his YouTube channel, so everyone should check that out. And he kind of just examines it every page, and I'm loving the fact that his kids are so into it because I like that there's adults reading it, but I love the fact that kids can also read this too. Some kids might be a bit too sensitive to it. I did a talk in my daughter's class about comics, and there was one kid that was like, this is not for me. I don't like ghosts. I don't like monsters.
Oh, I mean, you know what though? Good for that kid for knowing what they're into.
Yes.
But also, I really do feel that while some of it is dark, right? Especially like I mentioned, the monster you've created is scary. Like this is a big, scary, dark monster that I think the adults who read this will get a kick out of, but then the kids, they might get like that, real genuine shock out of.
Yeah, I will say, I'm
so glad.
Read Your Comics I sent him a preview PDF of issue 3, and he said the final page freaked them out a bit too much.
Oh God, this is going to be such a good series.
The cliffhanger on 3 is one of my favorite cliffhanger pages. Like I just love the page. I've told Ismael, you cannot sell that page to anybody but me. So
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, Michael, we are at our 45 minutes, so I will ask you my last two.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, so my last two questions, because we've talked about the book a bunch. We've covered in great detail where people can get it, which is super important. The fact that it's good, it's 80s style, sort of Stranger Things, but in modern times. Um, I guess my last two questions are just for people to get to know you. Uh, so you know what? One question I'm going to ask is, given all the recollecting, rereading, and then also reading of new content that you've been doing, um, I guess what over the last 2-3 years of a sprint, I'll say, that you've been doing for content and absorbing comics, what's been your favorite book or series?
Um, so right now I'm kind of obsessed with every Ghost Machine book. I um I already mentioned Jeff Johns is like my favorite writer, so I was all in pretty early. Like Junkyard Joe, Got Me, Geiger. I'm obsessed with Redcoat. That is my favorite. Like I'm so into it that even the Ghost Machine fans podcast has asked me to be on to talk about Redcoat. So I'm now guesting on the
Wow.
Redcoat episodes. But yeah, my pull list is basically Ghost Machine. I sometimes will like test out Spider-Man from time to time. I have Thundercats, any 80s thing, so Thundercats, Transformers, the whole
Right
Energize
on.
universe. Um, DC, I go in and out of. I loved the Alan Scott, Tim Sheridan run that just finished, that just wrapped. That was like my favorite. I love the Green Lantern book by Jeremy Adams. Those were two guys I had to meet at the recent Toronto Con. And then they have subsequently read Armored and gave me such fantastic blurbs for the book that I think we'll
Oh,
share once the Kickstarter launch goes live. Yeah, I read a lot, and I hope that answer your question.
yeah. So
Yeah,
basically, a lot of Green Lantern and a
yeah.
lot of the Ghost Machine books, which is exciting.
I
Um,
I should also mention I'm now, as of recently, a co-host on a podcast called Wizards
oh,
Comics, Wizards, the podcast guide to comics, which we do issue by issue examination of Wizard magazine. And
oh, cool.
one of our more recent things that we're doing on our YouTube channel is we let our listeners vote on what new comic we should read each week. So they pick two for us to buy at the comic shop. We purchase them, but they pick what we have to purchase, and then we give a little review of it. So I'm reading even more than I should be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what though? That is such a good way to get exposed to stuff outside of your comfort zone, so that way you
Yeah,
can really appreciate different things and get,
totally.
yeah.
Oh, I would
Uh,
not have read Blood Hunt
awesome.
if it wasn't for them voting on it. So I love
Well, I
vampires,
mean,
but
I would say it's a very popular book, but
it's
as
great. Yeah.
someone pointed out, they were like, "Yeah, popular doesn't mean good." But I'm
I
like, "Well, we'll
liked it.
see how sales to."
I love the first issue though. I wouldn't have enjoyed it
Okay,
and wouldn't have had the opportunity to enjoy it if I wasn't told you have to read this.
interesting. Well, I'll
Yeah.
have to check it out for the first couple issues, and I'll see what I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But then, yeah, Michael, my second last question, or I suppose my last question, my second last question. Um, Very simply, very easily, who do you think we should have on the show next to showcase their work?
How about let's go with do Tim Sheridan. Reach out to him. He's a great guy, and I love listening to his interviews. I loved his Alan Scott, and I just picked up his Masters of the Universe Revelations. He's doing the new
Oh,
Dark Horse series. The issue one dropped a few weeks. It actually dropped the same day as Armored, so that was really cool. The Diamond release of Armored. So yeah, I think he's a great guy. You should have him on.
okay. I will reach out and see what I can do. That being said, Michael, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time tonight to hang out with me, talk about your amazing new book, Armored, which people can get now.
Thank
And
you.
of course, next week back on Kickstarter.
Yep.
And yeah, it was a blast, man.
Thank you so much, Conrad. I really enjoyed chatting.
Absolutely. And for the folks out there in YouTube land, please do a like, comment down below what you think of Armored if you've read it, what you thought of Michael in our interview. Subscribe for more. And as always, we'll see you next time.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Nah, collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries.